Daniel Cole had always believed he was ordinary. He grew up in a small town, went to school like everyone else, and eventually found his way to the stars as an engineer aboard the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge. He fixed things. That was his job and his purpose. When something broke, Daniel made it work again. It was simple and honest work, and he liked it that way. The ship had been traveling through the outer reach for 3 weeks when everything changed. Daniel was in the engine room, checking power levels, when the first alarm sounded. The sound was sharp and loud, cutting through the quiet hum of the ship like a knife. "All hands to stations," Commander Griffin's voice came through the speakers. "We have an unknown spatial event directly ahead." Daniel grabbed his tools and ran toward the main corridor. The ship shook beneath his feet, and he had to catch himself against the wall to keep from falling. Through the small windows, he could see something impossible. Space itself seemed to be bending and twisting, like water going down a drain. Colors that had no names swirled in the darkness, and the ship was heading straight toward it. "Can we go around it?" Lieutenant Maya Santos shouted from the navigation console when Daniel reached the bridge. Commander Griffin shook his head. "It came out of nowhere. We are already caught in its pull." The ship lurched violently to the side. Daniel heard metal screaming somewhere below deck, and he knew that sound meant trouble. "I need to get to the lower hull," he said. "Something just gave way down there." "Go," Griffin ordered. "Keep us flying, Cole." Daniel ran. The corridors tilted and swayed as the ship fought against the anomaly's grip. Emergency lights flickered red and white, casting strange shadows on the walls. When he reached the lower hull, he found exactly what he feared. A section of the outer plating had buckled inward, and atmosphere was leaking into space through a crack the length of his arm. He worked fast. The emergency sealant was in a cabinet nearby, and he grabbed it without thinking. The crack needed to be closed before they lost too much air, before the whole section collapsed. He pressed his hands against the damaged metal, trying to hold it steady while he applied the sealant. That was when the ship passed through the heart of the anomaly. A wave of something hit Daniel. It was not heat or cold or pain. It was something else entirely, something that reached inside him and touched a part of himself he never knew existed. For just a moment, his vision went white, and he felt like he was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Then it passed, and he was just Daniel again, kneeling on the floor with his hands covered in sealant and blood. He looked down and saw a deep gash running across his forearm. A piece of torn metal had cut him when the ship shook, and he had not even noticed. The wound was bad, deep enough to see the layers of flesh beneath the skin. It should have hurt terribly, but the pain felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. There was no time to deal with it now. Daniel wrapped a piece of cloth around his arm, pulling it tight with his teeth. The bleeding slowed but did not stop. He finished sealing the crack and then checked the rest of the section for damage. Only when he was sure the ship would hold did he allow himself to sit down and breathe. Maya found him there 20 minutes later. Her face went pale when she saw his arm. "Daniel, you need medical attention right now." "I am fine," he said, but his voice sounded weak even to his own ears. "How is the ship?" "We made it through the anomaly, but we took heavy damage. The commander is bringing us down on the nearest planet for emergency repairs." She knelt beside him and carefully lifted the cloth to look at his wound. Her expression grew even more worried. "This is serious. You could lose the arm if it gets infected." "I will clean it when we land. Right now the ship needs me more." Maya looked like she wanted to argue, but she knew him too well. Daniel Cole did not stop working until the job was done. She helped him to his feet instead and supported him as they walked back to the bridge. Commander Griffin was standing at the main viewport, looking down at a planet covered in silver forests and purple oceans. "Prime," he said without turning around. "We have no choice but to land here. Our engines cannot make it to the next system." "The Dominion," Maya said quietly. "We know almost nothing about them. We know they are powerful and they do not like visitors." Griffin finally turned and saw Daniel's condition. His jaw tightened. "Get to the medical bay, Cole. That is an order." "After we land, sir. You might need me if something else breaks." The commander stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Stubborn fool. Fine. But the moment we touch down, you let Maya patch you up." The landing was rough but successful. The horizon's edge came to rest in a clearing surrounded by trees that glowed faintly in the fading light. Everything on this planet seemed to have a soft inner light, as if the world itself was alive with gentle fire. Daniel sat in the cargo bay while Maya cleaned his wound. The cut was already starting to close at the edges, which she found strange but did not mention. She wrapped fresh bandages around his arm and told him to rest. He tried to sleep but could not. Something felt different inside him, something that had changed when they passed through the anomaly. He kept seeing flashes of that white light behind his eyes, kept feeling that strange sensation of being connected to something vast and ancient. Outside the ship, figures moved among the silver trees, tall shapes with glowing marks on their skin, watching the human vessel with eyes that saw more than light. They had found them, and they were curious about what had fallen from their sky. Daniel did not know it yet, but his whole life was about to change. Everything he believed about himself, every memory of his ordinary childhood and his simple purpose, all of it would be questioned before the next sunrise. Because they could see things that humans could not, and what they saw when they looked at Daniel Cole was not entirely human at all. They came at dawn. There were 12 of them, each standing nearly 8 feet tall with skin like polished stone and patterns of soft blue light running across their bodies. They moved without sound, appearing at the edge of the clearing as if they had grown from the silver trees themselves. Commander Griffin met them at the base of the ship's ramp. Maya stood at his side, her hand resting near her sidearm but not touching it. Daniel watched from behind them, his wounded arm still wrapped in bandages that were already stained with fresh blood. The leader of the delegation stepped forward. His markings were brighter than the others, and his eyes were large compound structures that reflected the morning light like shattered mirrors. When he spoke, his voice was deep and musical, and the words came out in perfect human language. "You have landed on sovereign territory of the Dominion. You will come with us to the capital. Queen demands your presence." It was not a request. Griffin knew better than to argue with a civilization that could probably destroy his damaged ship without effort. "We will come peacefully. We mean no harm to your people. Our vessel was damaged by a spatial anomaly, and we had no choice but to land here." The leader studied him for a long moment. "Your reasons will be judged by the Queen. Follow." They walked for hours through the silver forest. The trees grew taller as they went deeper into territory, and the light filtering through their branches created patterns on the ground that seemed to shift and dance. Daniel found himself fascinated by this world despite the danger they were in. Everything here was beautiful in a way that made Earth seem dull and colorless by comparison. Maya walked beside him, watching his face with concern. "How is your arm?" "It hurts less than it should," Daniel admitted. "I think it might be healing faster than normal." "That is good, right?" He nodded, but something in his gut told him it was not normal at all. Wounds like his did not heal fast. They got infected, they took weeks to close properly. His arm should have been screaming with pain, but instead it only ached like a bruise a few days old. The capital city appeared before them as they crested a hill. It was built into the side of a mountain, with towers and bridges carved directly from the living rock. Light pulsed through channels in the stone, making the whole city glow like a heart beating with slow and ancient rhythm. Thousands have moved through the streets below, going about their lives in a civilization that had existed long before humans had learned to make fire. They were taken to a great hall at the center of the city. The ceiling rose so high that clouds drifted between the pillars, and the floor was a single piece of polished crystal that reflected everything above it like a still lake. At the far end of the hall sat Queen on a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself. She was the most striking being Daniel had ever seen. Her markings were not blue like the others but deep gold, covering her body in intricate patterns that moved and shifted as she breathed. Her eyes were ancient, filled with the weight of centuries, and when she looked at the humans, Daniel felt like she could see straight through him. "Humans," she said, and her voice filled the hall without effort. "Your kind is young and reckless. You travel between stars without understanding what lies in the darkness between them. Tell me why I should not simply destroy your vessel and send you walking back to your own territory." Commander Griffin stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, we are explorers, not invaders. We seek only to repair our ship and continue our journey. We will leave your space as soon as we are able." The Queen's eyes moved past Griffin, past Maya, and settled on Daniel. Something changed in her expression. It was subtle, just a slight widening of her compound eyes and a small shift in her posture, but Daniel felt the weight of her attention like a physical force pressing against his chest. "Come forward," she commanded, pointing directly at him. Daniel looked at Griffin, who nodded slowly. He walked across the crystal floor, each step echoing in the vast silence of the hall. The gold-marked Queen watched him approach with growing intensity, and the guards around her throne shifted nervously. "You are injured," Queen said when he stood before her. "Yes, Your Majesty, during the emergency that forced us to land." "Show me." Daniel hesitated, then unwrapped the bandages from his arm. The wound had changed since Maya had cleaned it that morning. The edges had pulled together, and new pink skin was already forming where there had been open flesh just hours before. It should have been impossible. Queen rose from her throne and descended the steps toward him. The entire hall held its breath. High Advisor, who stood at the base of the throne, made a sound of protest, but the Queen silenced him with a gesture. She took Daniel's arm in her hands, and her touch was cool like river water. She examined the wound closely, her eyes shifting through colors as she looked at it in ways no human could understand. Then she pressed one finger gently against the healing flesh, and Daniel felt something warm flow from her touch into his body. The Queen stepped back. Her face had gone pale beneath her golden markings, and her eyes were wide with shock. "This is not possible," she whispered. "Your Majesty," moved forward, concern clear in his voice. Queen turned to face her court. When she spoke again, her voice carried to every corner of the great hall. "This one is not what he believes himself to be. His blood carries the mark of the precursors. His cells regenerate with patterns we have not seen in 10,000 years." Silence fell across the hall like a blanket of snow. The guards stared at Daniel with expressions that mixed fear and wonder in equal measure. Maya and Griffin stood frozen, not understanding what was happening, but knowing it was significant. Daniel felt dizzy. "I do not understand. I am human. I was born on Earth. I have memories of my childhood, my parents, my whole life." The Queen looked at him with something that might have been pity or might have been awe. "Your memories may be true, young one, but your body tells a different story. Whatever you believe yourself to be, you carry something inside you that is older than my civilization, older than the stars themselves." She turned to her guards. "Take him to the sanctuary chambers. He will remain here until we understand what he is." "Wait," Griffin shouted, stepping forward. "You cannot just take one of my crew." "I can do whatever I wish within my own domain, human." The Queen's voice was hard now. "Be grateful I am not doing worse. Your man is either a miracle or a threat. Until I know which, he stays with me." Daniel was led away by guards who handled him gently, as if he might break or explode at any moment. He looked back at Maya and saw tears in her eyes, saw Griffin's hands clenched into fists at his sides. But there was nothing they could do. He was alone now, surrounded by aliens who looked at him like he was something more than human. And the worst part was, he was starting to wonder if they were right. The sanctuary chambers were deep beneath the mountain, carved from crystal that glowed with soft inner light. Daniel sat alone in a room that had no doors he could see, only smooth walls that seemed to breathe with the slow pulse of the city above. He had been here for 2 days, fed by servants who would not speak to him, and examined by scientists who touched his skin with instruments he did not recognize. On the third day, Queen came to him herself. She entered through a section of wall that simply melted away at her approach, then reformed behind her like water filling a gap. Her golden markings pulsed gently in the dim light, and her ancient eyes studied Daniel with an expression he could not read. "We have completed our analysis," she said, sitting across from him on a bench that rose from the floor at her silent command. "Would you like to know what we found?" Daniel nodded. His voice had grown rough from days of silence. "Please, I need to understand." The Queen was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "My people have existed for over 100,000 years. We have spread across this region of space, built cities on a dozen worlds, and developed sciences that your species will not discover for. But even we are children compared to those who came before." She waved her hand, and the walls around them came alive with images. Stars being born, galaxies forming, and in the darkness between them, shapes that were vast beyond comprehension. The precursors were the first intelligent life in this universe. They existed when the cosmos was young and hot, and they shaped it according to their will. They created stars where there were none. They designed the very laws that govern matter and energy. Daniel watched the images flow around him, showing civilizations rising and falling across billions of years. What happened to them? They grew tired, or perhaps they simply moved beyond what we can understand, but before they left, they planted seeds. The Queen looked at him with intensity that made his heart beat faster. They scattered their essence across countless developing worlds, hiding fragments of themselves within species that would not evolve for millions of years. These fragments were meant to wait, dormant and invisible, until the right moment to awaken. "And you think I am one of these seeds?" "I do not think it. I know it." She reached out and touched his arm where the wound had been. The skin there was now completely healed, smooth and unmarked except for a faint pattern that glowed slightly when her fingers pressed against it. "Your cells contain genetic sequences that match nothing in human biology. Your regenerative abilities exceed anything your species can achieve naturally. When you passed through that spatial anomaly, something inside you began to wake up." Daniel looked at his arm, at the faint glow that faded as the Queen removed her hand. "But I remember my life. I remember being a child on Earth, going to school, learning to fix machines. Are those memories false?" "No, I believe you truly were born on Earth, raised by human parents, lived a human life. But the seed was always inside you, passed down through countless generations until it found the right vessel." The Queen's voice softened. "You are human, Daniel Cole, but you are also something more. The two truths do not cancel each other out." He buried his face in his hands. This was too much. He had spent his whole life being ordinary, taking comfort in his simple role as someone who fixed broken things. Now he was being told that he carried the legacy of beings who had shaped the universe itself. "Why me?" he asked through his fingers. "Why did this seed choose my bloodline?" "We do not know. Perhaps there is no reason at all, only chance. Or perhaps the precursors saw something in your ancestors that we cannot perceive." The Queen stood and walked to the glowing wall, tracing patterns in the light with her finger. "What matters now is what you will do with this knowledge." Before Daniel could respond, the wall opposite them flickered and showed an image of the great hall above. High Advisor was addressing a crowd of nobles, his blue markings flashing with anger. "The human must be destroyed," declared to the assembly. "If what the Queen says is true, then he carries power that could tear our civilization apart. The precursors were not gods to be. They were forces of nature, unpredictable and dangerous. We cannot allow their legacy to walk among us." Shouts of agreement rose from parts of the crowd. But others pushed back, arguing that destroying a link to the precursors would be the greatest crime in history. The queen waved her hand and the image disappeared. Her expression was troubled. My people are divided. Many fear what you represent. Others see you as a holy gift. What do you see? Daniel asked. She turned to face him, and for the first time, he saw something like vulnerability in her ancient eyes. I see a young man who is frightened and confused, who did not ask for any of this. I see someone who has the potential to be either a bridge or a weapon, depending on the choices he makes. She paused. I see someone who reminds me that even the greatest powers in the universe once had to learn who they were. Daniel stood. His legs felt weak, but something was growing inside him, something that felt like determination. I do not want to be a weapon. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Then do not. The queen moved closer to him. The precursors are gone, but their seeds remain. If there is one inside you, there may be others scattered across the galaxy. You could spend your life searching for them, learning from them, helping them understand what they are. You could be a teacher instead of a destroyer. How? I do not even understand my own abilities yet. That is something we can help with if you are willing to learn. She offered him her hand, a gesture that seemed to surprise even her. Stay with us, Daniel Cole. Let us study together. Let us discover what the precursors truly intended when they planted their seeds so long ago. Daniel looked at her hand, then at the walls that showed faint reflections of his own face. He looked human. He felt human. But there was something else now, a warmth in his chest that had not been there before, a sense of connection to something vast and timeless. He thought of Maya, of Commander Griffin, of the ship waiting above the city. He thought of Earth and everyone he had left behind. They were still his people, still his family in every way that mattered. But maybe being human did not mean being limited to just one identity. Maybe it meant having the capacity to grow, to change, to become something new while holding onto everything you had been before. He took the queen's hand. I will stay for now, but I need to see my friends. I need them to know I am all right. Queen smiled, and for a moment her ancient face looked almost young. Of course, they have been asking about you constantly. The female nearly started a war trying to break into the sanctuary. Despite everything, Daniel laughed. That sounded exactly like Maya. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if he would ever fully understand what was waking up inside him. But for the first time since the anomaly, he felt like he was not facing it alone. The reunion with his crew was everything Daniel had hoped for and nothing like he expected. Maya threw her arms around him the moment the guards allowed her into the chamber, holding him so tight that he could barely breathe. Commander Griffin stood back, watching with relief clear on his weathered face. You stupid, stubborn fool, Maya whispered into his shoulder. I thought they were going to execute you. I thought I would never see you again. I am sorry, Daniel said, gently pulling back so he could look at her. I did not mean to worry you. Worry me? I have not slept in 3 days. Griffin had to physically stop me from attacking the palace guards. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What is happening, Daniel? The Queen's people keep talking about precursors and seeds and ancient powers. None of it makes sense. Daniel led them to a sitting area where food had been laid out by servants who seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts. He told them everything. The genetic analysis, the dormant sequences in his DNA, the theory about seeds planted across the galaxy by beings who had existed before the stars formed. Maya listened with her mouth slightly open. Griffin remained silent, his expression unreadable. When Daniel finished, the commander spoke for the first time. Do you believe it? I do not know what I believe anymore, but I cannot deny what my body is doing. The wound on my arm healed in days when it should have taken weeks. I can feel something different inside me, like a door that has been cracked open after being locked my whole life. Maya reached across and took his hand. It does not matter. Whatever is happening to your cells or your DNA, you are still Daniel. You are still the same person who fixed my console when I spilled coffee on it. The same person who stayed up all night teaching me to play chess. Whatever else you might be, you are my friend first." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had spent days wondering if his identity was a lie, if everything he remembered was just a shell covering something alien and unknowable. But Maya was right. He had lived 30 years as Daniel Cole. He had laughed and cried and loved and feared like any other human being. No revelation could erase that. "Thank you," he said quietly. The moment was interrupted by a sound from outside. Shouting, followed by the clash of metal against crystal. The walls of the chamber flickered, and an image appeared showing chaos in the corridors above. Soldiers were fighting each other, blue markings clashing against blue in a dance of violence. "The faction that opposes your presence has made their move," Queen's voice came from somewhere unseen. "They are coming for you, Daniel. You must flee to the throne room. It is the only place with defenses strong enough to protect you." Daniel stood, but before he could move, a section of wall exploded inward. 3 warriors stepped through the debris, their eyes locked on him with murderous intent. "The human abomination must die," the lead warrior declared, "for the safety of the Dominion." Griffin put himself between Daniel and the attackers. "You will have to go through me first." "That will not be difficult, old man." The warrior raised a weapon that looked like crystallized lightning, but before he could fire, something happened that Daniel could not explain. He felt the warmth in his chest surge outward, filling his whole body with energy that seemed to come from somewhere beyond himself. Time slowed. He could see every movement in the room with perfect clarity, could feel the heartbeat of every living thing within 50 feet. He moved. One moment he was behind Griffin. The next he was in front of the lead warrior, his hand wrapped around the weapon before it could discharge. The crystal structure cracked under his grip, falling to pieces that scattered across the floor like broken glass. The warrior stared at him with shock and fear. "What are you?" "I do not know yet," Daniel said, and his voice sounded strange even to himself, deeper and resonant with harmonics that no human throat should produce. "But I know I am not your enemy. Stand down and no one else needs to get hurt." The second warrior attacked from the side. Daniel turned and caught the blow meant for his head, redirecting it with a twist that sent the attacker stumbling into the wall. The third warrior hesitated, looking at his fallen companions, then threw down his weapon and ran. The energy faded from Daniel's body as quickly as it had come, leaving him dizzy and weak. Maya caught him before he could fall. "How did you do that?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I have no idea, it just happened." More sounds of fighting echoed from above, but these were different. Disciplined, organized. The Queen's loyal guards were pushing back against the rebellion. Within minutes, the corridors were secure, and soldiers in gold-trimmed armor escorted Daniel and his crew to the throne room. Queen was waiting for them, her golden markings pulsing with agitation. High Advisor knelt before her, his hands bound behind his back and his head bowed in defeat. "The rebellion has been crushed," the Queen announced, "and his followers will face judgment for their crimes." Looked up at Daniel with hatred burning in his compound eyes. "You should have killed me when you had the chance, hybrid. My death will not stop others from seeing the truth. You are a monster wearing human skin, and eventually you will prove it." Daniel walked forward until he stood directly in front of the bound advisor. He could feel the power still humming beneath his skin, could sense how easy it would be to reach out and end this life that threatened him. The precursor inside him stirred, offering strength that could shatter mountains. But he was not just a precursor. He was also Daniel Cole, a man who fixed broken things. He knelt so that his eyes were level with. "I understand why you fear me. I fear myself right now, but fear is not a good reason to kill. It is not even a good reason to hate." He stood and turned to the Queen. "Let him live. Lock him away if you must, but do not execute him for being afraid of something he does not understand." Queen studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Take him to the deep cells. He will remain there until I decide otherwise." As the guards dragged away, the Queen approached Daniel with something like wonder in her ancient eyes. "You could have killed him. You had every right to demand his death." "Maybe, but that is not who I want to be." "And who do you want to be, Daniel Cole?" He thought about it for a moment, about everything that had happened since the anomaly, about the power inside him and the memories that made him human. "I want to be someone who builds bridges instead of burning them, someone who uses whatever strength he has to protect instead of destroy." He looked at Maya and Griffin, at his crew who had risked everything to stay by his side. "I want to be human, even if I am also something else." The Queen smiled, and this time there was warmth in it that had not been there before. "Then perhaps there is hope for all of us." The days that followed the rebellion were filled with negotiations, ceremonies, and endless conversations about the future. Daniel found himself at the center of something he had never imagined. A bridge between two civilizations that had barely known each other existed before his ship crashed on Prime. Commander Griffin spent hours in meetings with Queen and her advisors, working out the terms of what would become the first formal treaty between humanity and the Dominion. Trade routes would be established, knowledge would be shared, and ambassadors would be exchanged to ensure that the peace lasted beyond this single moment of crisis. Maya stayed close to Daniel through all of it, refusing to let him face the overwhelming attention alone. She had become his anchor, the constant reminder that no matter how much he changed, there were people who cared about him for who he was rather than what he represented. "You could stay here," she said one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing city. "The Queen would give you anything you asked for. You would be treated like royalty for the rest of your life." Daniel shook his head. "This is not my home. Earth is my home. The horizon's edge is my home. You and Griffin and the rest of the crew, you are my family." He paused, looking out at the alien beauty spread before him. "But I think I have a responsibility now that goes beyond what I want for myself." "What do you mean?" "The Queen told me there might be others like me out there, seeds planted across the galaxy waiting to wake up. Most of them probably do not know what they are, just like I did not know. If they are right, the spatial anomalies are becoming more frequent. More seeds might be awakening every day." Maya frowned. "And you want to find them?" "Someone has to. These people will be scared and confused, facing abilities they cannot understand. Some of them might be dangerous if they have no one to guide them. Others might be in danger themselves, from civilizations that fear what they represent." He turned to face her. "I know how to help people who are struggling with something they never asked for. I know how to fix broken things and make them work again. Maybe that is my purpose now." She was quiet for a long moment, studying his face in the golden light of the alien sunset. "You are not going to do this alone." "Maya, I cannot ask you to give up your career, your future, just to follow me on some impossible mission across the galaxy." "You are not asking, I am volunteering." She punched his shoulder lightly. "Someone needs to keep you from getting yourself killed. Besides, you would probably forget to eat if I was not there to remind you." Despite himself, Daniel smiled. "What about the commander?" "Already talked to him. He is retiring when we get back to Earth. Says his knees cannot handle another decade of space travel." She grinned. "But he is putting in a recommendation that the new exploration division be built around our mission. Earth needs allies out here, and finding more people like you could give humanity connections across the galaxy that would take centuries to build otherwise." Daniel felt something loosen in his chest that he had not realized was tight. He had been so afraid of losing everything, of becoming something so different that his old life would no longer fit. But here was Maya, still standing beside him, still ready to face the unknown together. The next morning, Queen summoned Daniel to her private chambers for a final conversation. She sat by a window that looked out over mountains that stretched to the horizon, their peaks catching the first light of dawn. "Your ship has been repaired," she said without preamble. "My engineers have also made some improvements that should help you in your travels. Faster engines, stronger shields, and a communication system that will let you contact us no matter how far you go. Thank you, Your Majesty, for everything." She turned to face him, and her ancient eyes held something that might have been affection. "I have lived for over 3,000 years, Daniel Cole. I have seen empires rise and fall, watched species destroy themselves through fear and hatred, witnessed wonders and horrors beyond counting. In all that time, I have rarely encountered something that truly surprised me. And I surprised you. You terrified me at first," she admitted. "When I saw what you carried inside you, I thought of all the ways it could be used to destroy everything we have built. The precursors were not gentle beings. They reshaped reality according to their will, and they did not always care about the small lives caught in their transformations." She stood and walked toward him, placing her cool hand on his cheek. "But you are not them. You had power enough to kill your enemies, to tear down my palace stone by stone, to remake yourself into something that transcended your human limits. Instead, you chose mercy. You chose connection. You chose to remain who you had always been, even while becoming something new." Daniel felt the warmth in his chest pulse gently at her touch. "I am still learning. I do not know how to control what is inside me. I do not know what I will become." "None of us do. That is the nature of life, even for those of us who live for." She stepped back and smiled. "Go back to your people, Daniel Cole. Find the others like you. Help them understand that power does not have to corrupt, that being different does not mean being alone. And when you need guidance, know that you have a friend in the Dominion." The departure ceremony was attended by thousands of citizens who lined the streets to watch the human ship rise from their world. Daniel stood at the observation window as Prime grew smaller beneath them, its silver forests and purple oceans fading into a marble of color against the darkness of space. Maya joined him there, leaning against his shoulder as they watched the stars come into view. "Where do we go first?" "The Queen gave me coordinates for the nearest spatial anomaly. If there are others like me out there, that is where they are most likely to emerge." He looked down at his arm, where a faint bioluminescent pattern now glowed softly beneath his skin, a permanent reminder of what had awakened inside him. "It might take years. We might never find anyone. Or we might find hundreds. Either way, we will be doing something that matters." Commander Griffin's voice came over the intercom. "All hands, we are clear of space, setting course for the anomaly coordinates. It has been an honor serving with all of you. Now let us go find out what other surprises the universe has in store." Daniel smiled and turned away from the window. There was work to do. Equipment to check, routes to plan, reports to write for Earth Command. He was still Daniel Cole, engineer and fixer of broken things. But he was also something more now, a bridge between what humanity had been and what it might someday become. He thought about his parents back on Earth, about the town where he grew up, about all the small moments that had made him who he was. Those memories were still real. They still mattered. Being human was not about blood or DNA or genetic sequences. It was about choosing compassion over cruelty, connection over isolation, hope over fear. The precursors had planted seeds across the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to grow. But what those seeds became was not written in any ancient code. It was written in the choices made by the people who carried them. Daniel chose to be human, and that made all the difference.